Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into a company I bet you guys use every day. Adobe. Photoshop, Acrobat, the whole
Oh,
shebang.
yeah. Can't live without them.
And you know what? You actually sent over a ton of research on them,
Wow.
a full stock analysis, so it seems like you're thinking
Yeah.
maybe Adobe is a buy.
That's a good question. Investing in tech right now
Yeah, it's
it
tricky.
can be a little overwhelming to say the
Tell me
least.
about it. But what really got me is how much Adobe's changed. They're not just making software anymore. They're like
hmm
a whole digital experience empire.
Yeah, they've got their fingers in a lot of pies, and that's one of the things that makes them so interesting as an investment is they've got those three main business segments.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are these segments all about?
All right, so you've got digital media. That's where you find the famous Creative Cloud Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro,
Right, right.
all the tools that creatives just can't live without.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's digital experience, which is a little bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it's basically everything businesses need to connect with customers online,
Okay.
analytics, personalization, marketing automation, that sort of thing.
So they're not just giving businesses tools, they're helping them
Exact.
use those tools to reach people.
Yeah, it's very smart.
Really clever. What's that third segment?
So the third one is publishing and advertising, which kind of covers their legacy publishing software,
Okay.
plus some ad tech tools.
Gotcha. You know, one thing that really jumped out at me in the analysis was Adobe switching over to subscriptions for Creative Cloud.
Oh, yeah.
Remember back in the day when you just buy the software outright? Seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
So was that a good move?
It was a brilliant move. I mean, think of that. Subscriptions mean they get recurring revenue.
Yeah.
And for investors, that's,
That's like the holy grail, right?
oh, yeah, predictable revenue. It's like gold.
Yeah, stable income is definitely attractive. But let's talk about the hard numbers for a second.
Yeah.
I was blown away by their market cap, $200.30 billion.
Yeah, they are right up there with the biggest players in tech.
Big leagues.
It really shows you the market has faith in their future. And then you look at their revenue, $21.51 billion.
Wow.
And it keeps growing year after year. This isn't just luck. They're doing something, right?
Okay, so the revenue's impressive, but what about their gross margin, almost 89%? What does that tell us?
Now, that's where it gets really interesting. A margin that high means they have serious pricing power. People are willing to pay a premium for Adobe products, even if there are cheaper options out there.
Oh, interesting.
It shows you how strong their brand is. People see their products as essential.
So high margins mean more money for R&D,
Right.
share buybacks, dividends, all that good stuff.
Exactly. It gives them resources to stay ahead of the game, buy up interesting new companies, reward their shareholders.
Which makes investors happy. All right, so we've got this company with crazy high margins, huge revenue, a market cap that's through the roof, but their stock isn't exactly cheap. That analysis mentioned a PE ratio of 37.23.
Yeah.
So it's trading at a premium, but then there's that forward PE of 22.53 that has me wondering. Can you explain what all that means for someone who might want to invest?
So a PE ratio basically tells you how much investors are willing to pay for every dollar of a company's earnings. A higher PE ratio, like Adobe's, usually means investors think the company's earnings are going to grow in the future.
So they think Adobe's going to keep winning.
Right. And that forward PE is based on what analysts think earnings will be in the coming year. It's kind of like peeking into a crystal ball for a stock.
So even though the stock's expensive now, the market thinks it's going up from here. But let's face it, Adobe stock has been on a bit of a roller coaster ride lately.
That's true.
Down 26.22% over the past year.
Tech stocks have been taking a hit recently. Even a company as solid as Adobe isn't immune to what's going on in the market.
Yeah, no kidding. Every time I turn on the news, it seems like there's something new to worry about. Okay, let's switch gears for a second and talk about something that's been making a lot of noise in the tech world lately, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
The analysis mentioned Adobe's investing in generative AI, specifically their platform Adobe Sensei. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. Generative AI, it's basically a type of AI that can create new content, images, text, music, you name it.
So Adobe's trying to make like a super-powered creative assistant.
Exactly. And they're weaving Sensei into all their existing software, making their tools even more powerful. Imagine Photoshop could just automatically remove stuff you don't want from your photos or create realistic backgrounds with a couple clicks.
Wow,
That's the kind of magic we're talking about.
That's pretty mind-blowing, but I have to ask, what if AI ends up replacing human creativity altogether?
That's a good question. And honestly, it's a debate that's happening all over the creative world right now.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, AI is a tool, a very powerful tool, but still a tool. It's up to us humans to use it the right way.
So AI is a huge opportunity for Adobe,
Yeah,
but it also comes with some big challenges.
definitely. It's like walking a tightrope. And it's important to remember Adobe's not the only one playing in this space. Their competitors are investing heavily in AI too.
Of course, competition is tough. All right, so every investment has some risks, right? Even a company that seems as strong as Adobe. What were some of the red flags you saw in the analysis?
Well, competition is definitely one to watch. What if some new AI-powered software pops up that's better than Photoshop and cheaper? You never know.
Okay, what else should our listener be thinking about?
Well, Adobe's digital experience business relies a lot on big companies,
Enterprise customers.
right? If those companies start cutting back on their spending,
Yeah,
Adobe's going to feel it.
that makes sense. And then there's the whole data privacy issue.
Oh, yeah. That's a hot topic these days with everyone talking about data collection. Could that impact Adobe's digital marketing business?
It's definitely possible. Regulations are always changing. Who knows how that's going to affect Adobe's ability to collect and use data and how that could impact their revenue. Okay, so we've got this company, Adobe. They've got great financials, they're a leader in their market, and they've got a clear vision for the future. But there are some risks too.
That's a great way to sum it up. And that's what makes investing so tough. You got to weigh the good against the bad and make a decision that works for you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, we've covered a lot of ground already, from Adobe's business model to their financials to the crazy world of AI.
Yeah, we have.
But we've only scratched the surface. After a quick break, we're going to take an even deeper dive into Adobe's valuation, their stock performance, and what all this means for you as a potential investor. So stick around.
So we were talking about Adobe's valuation, and you're thinking about adding them to your portfolio.
Yeah, maybe.
It's exciting, but before you jump in, let's unpack that valuation a little more.
Okay.
We touched on their PE ratio, but what does that really mean for you as an investor?
I got to be honest, those PE ratios always kind of make my head spin.
Yeah,
It seems simple at first, but then I think about it too hard and I get lost.
I totally get it. It's easy to get bogged down to the numbers.
Yeah.
Think of it this way, like buying a house.
Okay.
You wouldn't just look at the price tag, right? You'd want to know how big it is, the location, what kind of shape it's in,
Yeah.
what the neighborhood's like, and if it's likely to go up in value.
Mm-hmm.
A PE ratio, it's kind of like it helps you figure out if the stock price makes sense based on the company's earnings and how much they might grow in the future.
Okay, that makes sense. So for Adobe, their high PE ratio means investors are willing to pay a premium because they think Adobe will keep growing, right?
Exactly. They're betting on Adobe's ability to innovate, keep grabbing more of the market, and basically make more money down the road.
But isn't that a little risky? I mean, tech changes so fast. What if something comes along and disrupts their whole business model, or a competitor just comes out of nowhere and steals their lunch?
Those are good points, and that's why no investment is completely risk-free.
Right.
But remember, Adobe has a history of adapting to change. They switched from selling individual software licenses to that subscription model.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be incredibly profitable.
You're right. I remember when that happened, a lot of people were skeptical, but it was a brilliant move.
It really was. And it shows they're not afraid to evolve their business. Plus, they're just so dominant in creative software. It gives them a huge advantage. I mean, Photoshop's basically become the Kleenex of photo editing.
It's true. Everyone uses it. Okay, so their brand recognition is a big plus, but even with all that, their stock price has been pretty volatile lately, right?
Yeah, we talked about that 26.22% dip over the last year. Their 52-week range has been from 403.75 to 607.32. So that's a pretty big swing even for a tech stock.
Yeah.
Right now it's around 462.76, and some of that volatility, that's just the market being jittery.
It feels like every time I check the news, there's something new to worry about: inflation, interest rates, you name it. It makes me a little nervous about investing.
I hear you, uncertainty can make even the most experienced investors feel a bit queasy. But remember, the market, it's a roller coaster. There will always be ups and downs.
True.
The key is to focus on the long game and not get too caught up in the day-to-day swings.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. It takes practice and discipline, but that's where really understanding a company's fundamentals comes in: their financials, their business model, who they're up against.
Yeah.
It helps you make decisions based on facts, not your emotions.
That's a good point. Speaking of understanding the fundamentals, let's look at Adobe's balance sheet. The analysis mentioned they have a ton of cash, like $7.89 billion.
Yeah, it's a great position to be in, especially with so much economic uncertainty. Right now, it's like a safety net. And it's not just about feeling safe. It gives them a lot of options.
Like what?
They could invest that money in R&D, maybe buy up some promising startup, or even buy back their own shares, which can boost the value for everyone who already owns stock.
So a healthy cash reserve is a good thing. What about their debt?
Another bright spot, they've kept their debt pretty low, which means they're managing their money responsibly.
Okay, so we've got impression financials, a strong balance sheet, they're a leader in the market. It all sounds pretty good. But you always say, look at both sides of the coin. What about those risks we talked about? Competition, economic uncertainty, data privacy. How could those things affect Adobe? And what should our listener be thinking about as they weigh their options?
You're right. You got to balance the excitement with a healthy dose of reality. Let's start with competition. Adobe's a giant in creative software, but they're not untouchable.
Right.
These new AI-powered tools, they could shake things up in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
It's true. The only constant is change, right?
Especially in tech, things change so fast. So for our listener, the question is, are there any companies or technologies out there that could knock Adobe off their throne? Could some new Photoshop killer be lurking out there on the internet? You never know.
You're making me nervous. What about those economic worries we talked about? How could those affect a company like Adobe?
Well, if businesses start cutting back on their spending, it's going to trickle down to Adobe, their digital experience segment. It relies a lot on those big enterprise customers.
Yeah,
So if companies tighten their belts, Adobe's revenue could take a hit.
that makes sense. And then there's the whole data privacy thing that seems like a minefield for any company doing business online.
Totally. Regulations around data collection are constantly changing. It's a lot to keep up with. And any changes to those regulations could affect how Adobe gathers and uses data, which could hurt their revenue and maybe even their reputation.
Okay, so there's a lot to think about. On one hand, you've got Adobe's strong financials, great brand, a history of innovation. But on the other hand, there are some risks that could really hurt them.
You nailed it. And that's where the real work begins for our listener. They need to really dig into these risks, think about how much risk they're comfortable with,
Yeah,
and decide if Adobe fits into their overall investment goals.
sounds like they've got their work cut out for them.
They do. I always tell people, go beyond the headlines, do your own research, look at Adobe's competitors, read what the experts are saying, learn about what's happening with AI and data privacy. The more you know, the better decisions you'll make.
Great advice. All right, so we've talked about Adobe's business, their financials, those potential risks. What are some final thoughts for our listener as they think about investing in this company?
You know, investing, it's a journey, not a destination. It's about learning, adapting, and making decisions that are right for you and your goals. And remember, even the smartest investors mess up sometimes.
Yeah,
The important thing is to learn from those mistakes and keep going.
that's a good point. And hey, maybe someday AI will be able to predict the stock market perfectly, and all this will be a lot easier.
That would be something.
Until then, happy investing, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time. All right, so we spent this whole deep dive looking at Adobe, their business, their financials, that crazy world of AI.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. But let's step back for a second and look at the big picture. What does all this mean for our listener who's trying to decide, should I invest in Adobe or not?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And the answer is, it's tricky.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer. It really depends.
So what are the key takeaways here? What should our listener be thinking about as they make this decision?
Okay, well, first things first, Adobe is a powerhouse in creative software and digital marketing. They've got a fantastic track record, their financials are strong, and they've got a clear vision for where they're going. Their investment in AI, especially with Adobe Sensei, shows they're not just sitting around, they're actively trying to shape the future of their industry.
Definitely a plus, but we also talked about some risks too.
Yeah, you can't ignore those competitions, especially from those new AI-powered companies. It's something to keep an eye on. And Adobe's reliance on those big enterprise customers, it makes them a little vulnerable if the economy takes a hit. And then there's data privacy that's a whole other can of worms.
It's like a constant balancing act.
It is, you've got to weigh the potential rewards against the potential risks.
And that's where our listener's personal situation comes in, right?
Exactly how much risk are they comfortable with? What are they hoping to get out of this investment? Are they looking for quick gains or are they in it for the long haul? All those things are going to factor into their decision.
It sounds like they've got some homework to do.
Oh, yeah. I always encourage people to dig deeper. Don't just take our word for it. Look at what Adobe's competitors are doing. Read some industry reports. See what the experts are saying about AI and data privacy. The more you know, the better you'll feel about whatever decision you make.
Such good advice. Any final thoughts for our listener?
Just remember, investing, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's about learning and adapting and making choices that are right for you and your goals. And don't forget, even the pros make mistakes sometimes.
That's true.
The important thing is to learn from those mistakes and keep moving forward.
Well said. Hey, maybe someday AI will be able to predict the stock market with like 100% accuracy and all this will be a breeze.
Would that be nice?
Until then, happy investing, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll catch you next time. SDAA.